prospective listeners and watchers. If you're watching this on YouTube, you are with Perspectives with
Lisette.
and Martina. So we just want to say welcome. Welcome back if you have been here before, and welcome if you have not been here before. We have a good time on here. We talk seriously, but we also are kind of silly as well. So stay tuned because this is part two, I believe, of our conversation around the selfishness of America. So, in the first episode, we talked about the American dream and what that means. How did we get here? Who coined the phrase? Even those in other countries are wanting to achieve the American dream. What does that look like? And you should go back and watch that one because it's really
Yes.
good and it's going to connect. Pretty much this entire series connects to each other.
Yeah.
So, that's a good place for you to start. And so, today, I think we just get into it. We want to
Mhm.
spend some time talking about American culture. And is American culture selfish? What does that mean? When you look at America, what do you think in terms of culture? You
Yeah.
know? And so obviously, before we got into this recording, we were like, what? We have to have our little powwow. I hate saying powwow because I think that is a cultural reference myself. So I won't say that. Excuse me. We
Yeah.
had a discussion
Yes.
um, around what is American culture? Because, and this is a question I've seen that people are like, what the hell is American culture? What does that mean?
Hmm.
And, we did a little dive. And it's everything from the good, bad, and the ugly. I think
Hmm.
mainly bad, but there are some good qualities in America as well. Um, but what did we find? Let's say, what are some of the things? We can just call them out. When we think of America,
Yeah. No, so I went ahead and Googled and I said, what is American culture? Because I was like, see, Martinez, I was like, we need to like do a little bit of like some research
yeah,
because I told her I really don't have an answer. But I found it interesting because there were a couple of sites that popped up that were um directed towards like foreign exchange students or people that are coming to the US as tourists or things like that. And one of the things that popped up a lot was like fast food,
of
right?
course.
Like fast food, um always being on the go, like to go coffee cups was like named in like three different websites that we looked in, like three different articles, and wanting and always kind of being, running from one thing to another, from like an appointment, picking up kids and things like that. Big portions. I
Yes.
mean, that is an ongoing joke with the United States, just like how big our portions are. Everything, is bigger. Even when you think about like in the US, we also always say everything's always bigger in Texas. So it's like even we know that that's just something that culturally we have. And like I shared with Martina, I was like, I've had family members that have come from, Mexico, and like we've taken them to eat and they're just amazed at the portions we have at restaurants. Like, they're like, do you eat all this? I was like, of course not. You eat what you're gonna eat and then you take it to go.
Good to go.
So you can have it for dinner the next day, like depending. And that's not a I realized it's like, oh, that isn't something that is normal everywhere. Like I just thought it was normal. Like you should have leftovers. Like
I
who
know.
doesn't love a good leftover? Like,
I know. And depending on that leftover, it can be real good the next time.
ooh, and then sometimes it's just better the next day
It really
too.
is. Yes.
Um,
Now that one I'm
so-
for taking it home for that.
yes, that I'm
Yes, I'm for that one.
that is a section of our American culture I will be proud of.
Yes.
Yeah, to have a good leftover, for sure. But then we got into some of the things like sports was something that I saw come up. Then Martina, I mentioned like we definitely know football, American football,
Yeah.
is huge around here, and just like basketball, baseball, like these things that are just very to us very American. Like baseball is probably one of the most American things that I
Like,
think.
isn't like American pastime? Isn't
Yeah,
that
America's favorite pastime is what is
pastime?
usually referred to. So it was just interesting to kind of not hear, but to see those things like pop up, because I was like, but then I also was like, that's our culture, like that's
When
the
you get pickup trucks.
pickup SUVs, pickup trucks, like these big,
Big, big.
cars, like everything's
Yes.
just big. Um, so yeah, like it was just very interesting that you Google that and there's these things that you just don't think as, to me, I wouldn't put that as just culture. Like I just do like, oh, that's just part of, I don't
Yeah.
know, society, like art, like I just never would have like, but apparently, people from other countries and other countries look to the US and they're like, oh, yeah, they're always on the run. They
Always.
love they love big portions. They love big cars. And they love sports competition. Competition was like one that was pointed
Competition. Yes. Yes.
which
Competitive.
is very true. When you think about like reality TV,
Yeah.
like how like popular that became at some point, like we love a good competition show. I mean, you look at The Voice, American Idol, all
Oh,
these like
yeah. Yeah.
all these things that The Bachelor, the Bachelorette, like like all these things that it's competition. Like, hey, you have to compete. You have to see who's better, who's gonna win, who's on top. That's why sports are such a huge thing, uh, culturally, apparently. Um, but yeah, but like anything from your end, Martina, that just kind of were like surprised you or just like, yep, that's it.
When you said the reality show thing, it's so interesting because even other countries now are
Yeah.
investing in reality shows. We look at what Love Island, it started off in Australia.
Mhm.
Even now you turn on your Netflix, we got the Great British Bake Off, which we all
Yeah.
love, but
Right.
it's a competition.
Yep.
We all love this. It's a great show.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how that has seeped into
Yeah.
other countries, and how big of a market it obviously is. And you
Yeah.
touched on sports and the competitiveness. But I will say, as a positive with sports, and I
Yeah.
think music as well, those are often unifiers. Because growing up in Mississippi, Mississippi, and football is king. I went to LSU. I talk about this from time to time. Football is huge, and
Yeah.
I would say it is a thing that brings people from all different backgrounds together. Football's what, 3 hours. So 3 hours, like people can, enjoy the same sport that they love,
Mhm.
while still being competitive, hopefully a fun
Yeah.
competition. But it made me think of that, how it can be a unifier. And there was some other positive. Wait, what was some of the other positive things that they said about American culture? I can't remember.
I was trying to go back and see
I was trying to make that
other things
connection.
that were like positive out here. I don't know. I'm trying to find where I was looking at. Um, but something that just came up, and it could be positive, it could be
Yeah.
negative, depending on who you ask, is our communication style as Americans. It says here in almost every single kind of article I opened or site that I opened was like, Americans are direct communicators. Like we're very direct, we're very frank in our conversations. Cut to the chase. That's something that I know I was like, can we just get to the point already? Like get to it. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, hey,
You
just
know,
chase. Like we don't need all this fluff. Like,
well, and I think communication style, because really, when you meet someone new, you
mhm,
shake their hand, introduce yourself, and some people are more
yeah,
comfortable with hugs and whatnot. And you look at some other cultures, you do not shake their hand. You may not go up to certain people depending on their rank and
yeah,
their position in that society. So it just makes, I think, like you said, it could be a positive or a negative. And I don't think in this instance it can be. I don't see it as a negative right now because I see in that part it seems like an openness to
yeah.
just get up and welcome people in. And again,
Mhm,
I think it kind of goes back to, all these other different cultures
mhm,
that may not necessarily do that. But then you got cultures, look at the Italians. They embrace, look at the French, they embrace each other. So I
yeah,
think, there's some similarities there in terms of like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I will say, going back to the timeliness and to get to, I'm the same way because I'm sitting here and thinking like, y'all need to get to the damn point. Like, what
Yeah.
are you doing here? Like, we don't have time to waste. And it's like, why do we have this concept
Yep.
that we can't waste time? Like, it's just, I don't know, is it because time is money? That takes us back to capitalism. But what it is, like, even when I've traveled to other countries,
Yeah.
and obviously they know we're American. Sometimes I'll say I'm from Canada, because just saying. But they know that we're American, and they will like always check in on us and like bring us a check, to the point where I was like, I thought this country is supposed to be laid back. But then I have to think, to them, they see Americans as wanting to be done
Yeah.
and rushing out, which is oftentimes is true. Like, we're all standing in the Starbucks, Dunkin' line. We're trying to get our coffee. Even now we have mobile apps. You can
Yes.
sit in
I
your
was just
coffee.
going to say that.
Great minds, great minds. Like, you can send in your request for coffee and have it ready before you even get there. Like, it's convenience. And I think that's another word to throw in here. Americans about convenience.
Convenience.
It is
We
very
have
convenient.
convenience stores. Like,
We have convenience stores. Yes. And
right.
even when we take that leftover, that is convenient for us. Because, like, next day, you may have lunch, you may have dinner. You don't have to try to find, like, what am I going to eat? It's convenience.
It's just convenient. Like, yeah, I think about that all the time. I know when we've gone to eat and we
Yeah.
take leftover pizza, because typically we'll go get pizza. But it's like, oh, I'll have lunch for tomorrow. I'll already have my dinner for later. I'll just finish this for like, it's such a convenient thing. So yes, convenience. It might not have like popped out in some of these things, but I think all of this kind of goes to that theme of
Yeah.
like convenience. Like, look, what's gonna make my life easier? What's gonna make me not waste so much time? What's just gonna make this process just speedier and just better? Like, I think convenience drives a lot of American culture. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a whole conversation in
I'm gonna
itself.
say that is, and it produces a hell of a lot of money. There we
Yes.
go, into the economy.
I mean, think about Uber, DoorDash, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub,
All of them.
Amazon.
Amazon has market, like the Amazon market, you can get food delivered, and even you can pay extra to have it delivered sooner if you
Yeah.
like.
I mean, just think about like companies like HelloFresh. You already have all of the ingredients. They give you a recipe of like how to do all this. You also have companies out here that have ready-made meals. You just pop into the microwave.
Yes.
Convenience
I
drive.
forgot about that one. I forgot about the HelloFresh and the Blue Aprons of the
Blue
world.
Aprons and I know there's one that actually comes with like prepared meals that you just have to pop in the microwave, but I don't know what it's called.
So there's so many of them now, because they pop up on my Instagram. I don't know why, but it's so many of them nowadays. They've marketed as like, this is like the freshest product, the freshest produce. Pop it in the microwave, you got a whole meal. And again, it is. Again, I don't know how we got here. It's probably a different conversation, but this idea of,
it's part of the question we posed, Martina, in the beginning.
yes, it is. It is a part of the question that we pose, but it's like, how did we get to this way where we just want to be convenient? Like, everything here is convenient.
I wonder, I mean, we are exploring selfishness, so somehow I feel that is connected to it. Because, selfishness will drive a lot of what we kind of do. And, if I don't want to be standing in line, or I don't want to have to be listening to whoever having a conversation or like whatever, like, if I can just skip the line, a mobile order, have it delivered to me. I mean, I haven't done it, but I know people that order Starbucks, right? On like Uber Eats. I haven't been able to bring myself, just because I'm like, I cannot order Starbucks. I mean, Starbucks is already expensive, right?
Yeah.
It's even more expensive on Uber Eats, and then you tack on the fees that Uber just tacks on, on there. I'm like, I just can't do it.
You'll be paying $20 for one white chocolate mocha by the time you get that order.
I can't do it. Props to y'all that can and do it. The fact that you have the money to do that, props to y'all, because that one, there's been moments where I've been tempted. I'm like, oh, I
Oh,
want some
definitely.
snacks, but I don't.
I thought about it over the weekend. Really, I was like, I'm gonna treat myself and get Starbucks ordered, but I couldn't. I couldn't do it because I just literally I'll be paying $20
Yes.
to get this white chocolate mocha delivered to me, and it's just not worth it. I can put that $20 elsewhere.
That
Just not
is
worth it.
so completely off topic. Not-
But related.
but
You watch us, you know we go in tangents. We always bring it back.
another thing that popped up, not just the directness of Americans, but the informality
Mm.
of Americans. Which I was like, huh. I was like, yeah, that's very true. Because when I think, you know, Mexican here, like, when a lot of like Romance language have that sort of like, you have formal Spanish, you have informal Spanish, you have like how to like you address people that are older than you, how do you like all these different things. But the English language in general doesn't have a lot of that. But even just like culturally, like there's just informality that kind of just happens, and it's like, which I was like, oh, I never really thought
Yeah,
about how
neither.
really informal we are. I mean, I think the only kind of formal thing you kind of see is like, I think when you start getting into those spaces where there's like C-suite, so like corporate America, you might start seeing a little bit more of that formality. But I think even that is kind of going away. Like some of these, C-suite people are starting to be like, no, I want to relate to,
Yeah.
the everyday person. I want to like, I'm just like you. Like there's nothing. So there is a lot of that versus you go to other countries, there is going to be a strict like, no, I'm over here and you're over here, and y'all gotta know your place,
Yeah.
and sort of thing. So it's an interesting that was one that just kind of popped in my head, and I was like, huh, that is actually fairly true about how informal we can be. Um, in certain situations and things like that that could sort of throw people off that
I know.
come from other cultures and other countries.
We chatted before about like what we were talking about food. Because
Mhm.
another thing that popped up is like, what's the typical American food?
Oh
Hot
yeah.
hamburgers. And then
Mhm.
we also, we took it a little bit further. We were talking about the cultural part, is that a lot of cultures, when they welcome you, um, and food is also a big connector as well, just
Yeah.
across multiple cultures. But we had got to talking about different cultures being open with food. And like, I know like if you would go to my grandma's house and you said, you had people come to your mama house, we're gonna
Yeah.
fix you a plate.
Yeah.
Like that's just what we're gonna do. Like if you're not eating, what's wrong? Like we're gonna
Mhm.
and it's so many cultures I think that are like that because food is often a way to show love and or show that you care for different people. And I think particularly I would say in the South too. I would say in the South that's also a thing, whether you're black or white or other
Yeah.
people. But it is a thing. You come by somebody's house, the first thing their mama or their daddy gonna ask you what you want to eat, and don't let them cooking dinner. Like you're gonna stay
Yeah.
over, or we gonna fix you a plate. You know,
Mhm.
and it just made me think about how I don't think that's necessarily a part of American culture. I think it's pockets. Like I said, it's like in the South,
Yeah.
it's a big thing among people of color, among other ethnic groups. But when I think of America, because then also, I think this just ties back to that selfishness part where it's like Americans are too selfish.
Yeah. No, I think in all seriousness, I think if we start getting into sort of that the conversation we're trying to get to,
Yeah.
um of how we got to this question, because one of the uh questions we posed to ourselves, to each other, was, is American culture selfish? And I think that's why we went into then we asked like, well, what really is American culture? So that's where, just to give y'all who are listening and watching a little context as to how we got to this and how this kind of relates to our series in general, is like, what is it, and is it selfish? And to your point, when I think about like food, right? And then you mentioned like with my mom, it's like most likely if you're walking into my house and there may not be any food made. Like my mom might not have cooked or anything, but she's gonna give you something. It might just be some cut up fruit with some tahini on the side if you want, like, or some lime on like you're gonna get fed one thing or another. She's gonna ask you, are you hungry? You want something to drink? She yells at me because I didn't offer my friend something to drink. I was
I
like, I
know, I think that's
forgot.
it.
I was like, I forgot. We started talking, like, and then she comes back. She's like, you didn't even offer your friend something to drink. Here, you want some water? You want me to make it? I'm like, so, but I think in general, that's not really what you experience from American culture. And that's probably why I forget sometimes to offer because hey, you grew up here. I grew up here, American. Like I went to our school systems and all these things. And it's like it's not like something that you even see reflected on television. Like I think that's a lot where we get our references to American culture is obviously television and things like that. Um, you don't see that reflected in television, unless I'm watching, you know, uh a show that's primarily with Black culture or Latino culture or something like that that reflects. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's true. My mom's gonna feed you. Like, you're gonna come in and she's gonna want to feed you or something, right? And see that reflected on it. So yeah, it really kind of makes you pause and think about um American society, American culture. Is it just inherently selfish because we are informal, because we want convenience, right? Because we're like, no, it's a me. Even competitiveness, when you think about it, that's all about you. Like, we have to win, I have to win, I'm only going to contribute as much as my team might contribute, and all these things that, like, who's the superstar, like who's the MVP, like that is built in to a lot of our sports. Like there's an MVP, like the most valuable player, like who was it, like, and it's like, but it's a team sport, like how can you have like
I know.
like
Everybody contribute.
everybody contributed, but you apparently know like one person was
Mhm.
the MVP when it's like it's not like it's tennis, right? Like it's just you and like the other person, right? But if it's a team sport, like that always makes me a little, I'm like, I don't get it. It's a team sport. You all contributed. Like I don't but again, is it these kind of things that now have influence and sort of been like kind of lend into this idea of selfishness, and sort of like, hey, it's about me. It's about what I can do, what I can contribute, what's convenient for me. And I don't really care if it's convenient for you. I mean, how many times have any of you all seen on TikTok someone who just gets mad because their order is taking long, and then they take it out on the worker, and they're like, look, we got like a line out the door, you just have to wait, it's coming up. But then they become this whole thing because it's no longer convenient for the person who ordered, and now they just have to, because it's like it's about me. So yeah, I think that's part of our cultures. I mean, for me, kind of, I think real time, where I mean, I know real time I'm digesting this and processing this as we're kind of recording, and being like, man, there is a lot of that selfishness that comes into play into our everyday interactions, that we don't really kind of talk about, or kind of see, or really kind of have conversations around. But I'll kind of let you either respond or share your thoughts, Martina.
You said a lot of things, and one thing that really stuck out to me, you said me. This
Hmm.
is a country that values the individual. We
Yeah.
don't, and of course, that is a part of the selfishness. But I think this is why, when we look at other things like education and healthcare, housing, essential things, um, we're not thinking in terms of a group. We're thinking in terms of I, and we're thinking
Yeah.
about, this one singular person. Because I would look back and say, you know, I don't think America is a very welcoming place. Even we talked about these
Mhm.
being direct and communication. Some of those could be great things, but I don't really see Americans. Again, there are pockets. There are pockets of them. Like at
Yeah.
your mama's house, I would feel very welcome at your mama's house, and you would feel very welcome
Yes,
at
you
my
would. Yes,
mama's
you
house.
would.
But we have to remember, you're from a Mexican background, and I'm from an African American
Yeah.
background. Two
Yeah.
groups of people that are very welcoming. And
Yes.
but in America, there's so much focus on the individual. Like just
Yeah.
like you said, like I don't care how this inconveniences you. I wanted my order when I wanted it. Oh,
Yeah.
and you got it to me 20 minutes late, and you don't even have the right things on this hamburger. It's very much that blaming the individual, and it's even more so blaming individuals in those sort of situations where you're looking at corporations and different companies instead of
Mm,
blaming the
yeah.
corporations and companies who are banking all this money. You're taking out all this frustration on one singular person who is
Yeah.
just trying to do their job, maybe trying to pay their bills, put themselves through college, whatever it may be. You're mad at this one singular person for
Yeah.
something that was most likely out of their control. But it just really made me think how that is a very selfish thing in this country. We can't seem to wrap our head outside of the different ethnic groups, wrap our head around getting out of this thought about thinking about just the individual. Even
Yeah.
going back to, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's
Mm,
talking about your life, your happiness. We're
yeah.
not talking about we want everybody to be happy. We want this for everybody. That's not what it says. And anybody that is a political science major, if it does say that and I missed it, please let me know in the comments. You can DM me. Um, but that was the thing that really stuck out to me when you were talking. Is that I,
Mhm.
me, that individualness, and it's that we've talked about it again, like that. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
Yeah.
Again, you got to depend on yourself. You can't depend on anybody. Like nobody's going to help you, and that's another thing. Nobody's going to help you get where you want to go. And it's another thing. You know how this country is about like our social services. They
Mm,
basically,
yeah.
honey, you got to be on Skid Row before you even get sort of assistance on anything. I'm saying this from experience, from family
Yes.
members that have
Yeah.
had to be on social services. I
A
mean,
100%.
exactly. Like we got people out here who, if they get a promotion or if they make a few extra bucks, they can't get food stamps.
Yeah.
So they will not take that promotion because they got to still feed their kids at home because
Yeah.
that it'll be taken away from them. And they don't make any little to nothing at all. And it's just, to me, it's just this whole concept of like, I don't necessarily see America as a welcoming country that where we take care of each other. Again, outside of different ethnic groups, but it's just not a country where we take care of each other. Even if we do, we don't want to. You don't
Yeah.
want to do it. You feel like you're forced to. You're doing it just to say, I did it. Like I gave them $20. I didn't want to help them out, but I had.
Mhm.
And it's just that is America to me. Yeah.
Yeah. You said so much, Martina. But I think to me, one of the things that when you were talking about the convenience, right, and the portion of it, and the I in me, one of the things that probably about a month or maybe a month or two ago, I remember I went to a meeting at a restaurant, and I had ordered two tacos, and I had said just cilantro because I am not an onion fan.
Mhm.
Um, and they made a mistake and they put the onions, which always it tends to happen. I think it's just the cooks are just used to just dropping all of them. And and I was like, and I made the comment out loud. I'm like, oh, I had said no onions, but I was like, it wasn't a lot, so I was like, it's fine. But the person next to me was like, but you told them no onions. You should return that and just get it without onions. I was like, I could just pick them out. Like they're gonna throw them away anyway. I was
Mhm.
like, I'd rather just pick out the onion. Like, like if one or two pieces are in there, like I'm not gonna like die. Like I'm like it's just inconvenient for me, but it's
Right.
gonna be more inconvenient for me to return them because then they have to throw it away and then they have to like, and I'm like, so it was, but the fact that the first reaction of the individual was to be like, no, get what you paid for,
Yes.
get what you
No.
asked for, because it's what you wanted. And I'm
Yes.
like, and I think about like just they're gonna throw it away. Like
No.
that's the only thing I could think about was like they're gonna throw it away.
Anyway.
It's just it's inconvenient for them. So it's like I'd rather just remove like it was just but the fact that that was the initial reaction just to me at the time, I didn't think much of it. But now that I was remembering when you were talking and instead of sharing, I was like, man, it is really ingrained in us of like you get what you want. It doesn't matter if it's going to inconvenience somebody else, but you asked for this. And it's like, and I was like, oh, I didn't want to be that person that was like, excuse me, I said, like, no.
And now they're gonna throw it out anyway. Like that's wasted food.
Especially with food, like food, you know, they're going to throw it out. I'm like, they're going to throw it out. They can't serve it. They can't put it back anywhere. The only thing they can do, or, you know, what, you know, legally they're supposed to do is throw it out.
Yeah.
Um, and it's one of those things where I was like, again, all it was going to require me to do was just, you know, pick the onions off and I'll be fine. But it was just very interesting to think back and sort of just remember that comment that was just like the automatic response was like, no, you should let them know because you wanted it this way. And to your point of like, it's me, what I want, what I deserve, what I'm paying for. How many times have we heard people say like, I paid it to be this way and I paid it to be, and it's like, and we use that as fuel to be like, I'm going to get my way, even if you might be actually be wrong.
Yes.
Like, it's just like, no, because you know, and so it's just one of those like very like fascinating things to kind of look into and see about our culture, like the American culture. You know, and I say our culture because I mean I was born here, like,
Live
you know,
here. Live here.
I'm like I live here, born here, you know. It's interesting. I mean, completely off topic, but one of the things that probably can talk about, there's an artist who her name is Becky G, and she calls herself, I guess people call themselves 200 percenters. And I never had heard about 200 percenters, but it's because you are 100, well, she's Mexican, she's like 100% Mexican, 100% American. And I was like, huh, I'm not half and half. Like, what am I over here saying? I'm like half and half. Like, you are definitely, you're both. Like, you are 100% this and you're 100%. And I was like, 200 percenter. I was like,
Never
that
thought about
makes
it. Yes.
that makes a lot more sense than me saying 50-50. Like, oh,
Because it's not. It's
but
not 50-50.
so off topic, but it just made me think about that.
Well, no, I mean that's I had a point with that, but it might come back to me. But I think like this conversation of like me and I'm kind of taking this a little bit different now. I think it kind of comes to, when we think of the wealthy, the ultra wealthy, we
Mm,
look at our
yep.
entertainers here in America, just like, we open talking about reality shows, like look at all the other countries doing it. And, you made this point before we hopped on the record, like how the music here and the movies here,
Yep.
they're so big, and that, I think we don't realize how other cultures are necessary, at least I don't, how other cultures are looking at America, because still in a lot of ways, American film and well, I can't say American music because music is not necessarily like, that's a whole different topic. I can go there about American music, but most of the music here that is popular in this country influences other countries. Like if you look at, hip hop all across the world, people love hip
Mhm.
hop, and it's, started here in the late 70s and the 80s. And it's such a big cultural phenomenon. And you see it, particularly in some like Asian communities and things like that,
Yeah.
where they have that influence. And it's often something that I don't necessarily always look at and think how much America is impacting other countries. And again, like I said, because I was born here, I was raised here. And I
Yeah.
said earlier about, I don't see America as welcoming. And I guess I want to, say that in an instance where I think there's some areas that some
Mhm.
pockets here in America where it can be welcoming. And like I don't want to throw everybody into one bad bowl, even though,
That's a very good point, Martina.
yeah, and I don't want people to feel like, we're bashing America. This is just our opinion. And we pulled from some truths because then we were talking about hot dogs and pickup trucks. Honey, that is the truth. This is what these articles said. They like, this is what we think of America. But it just kind of made me, and I know we're getting close to time, so this might be a part of the next series, but really want to kind of look at how does American culture influences the ultra wealthy and the entertainers and what that looks like, because we know entertainers are some of the most well-paid people in the world. We got actors out here making 20-30 million dollars per movie,
Yeah.
where we have teachers and professors who maybe make 100K. I'm sure some teachers would probably fight me and they, but we don't make 100K. But it just thinks about and how we prioritize things in this country, what we consider important and what we consider
Yeah.
not important, and how that plays a role into like selfishness, or does it play a role? I guess it depends on who you ask. But yeah, I think that's something I would want to get into for the next episode.
Yeah. And even athletes.
Jesus Christ, yes,
I mean, the amount of
yes,
money athletes make in this country
right. From one game,
for
million.
one game, and I mean, I think it's just anything to do with entertainment it's just fascinating in general. But yeah, I think to start kind of wrapping up and sort of in that, I think in general, with the conversation we've been having, just thinking about American culture and the sort of can of worms that we've kind of opened up here, because we've gone in different directions with this conversation, just goes to show that there's so much to sort of uncover about American culture and to discuss, but also like how our theme of selfishness is really kind of rooted in a lot of these things that we're going to continue sort of uncovering and discussing and seeing, because yeah, there is this huge push about me, myself, and I, in a lot of things. We look, like, talking about like sports and MVP, and it's the me, myself, and I, um and then even when people get to a certain tax bracket, they're like, no, it's my money. I'm not going to pay more taxes because, you know, it's me. I made it. Not my fault. That person can't make it. Um, and it feeds into, again, our American culture, like how others see our country and how we see ourselves. Because I mean, I don't know about you, Martina, but for me, I'm like, oh, yeah, we are kind of selfish a little bit. Like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, yeah, that didn't think about that one. Yeah. Yep,
Mhm.
yep, that's like having those sort of, moments of like, oh yeah, that is it. Like that, never would have thought about it. But yeah, like any final thoughts, or just ready to wrap up, Martina?
We'll be here another 30 minutes. So
Okay, okay.
thank everybody for listening.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be back. We'll continue. If you all have any thoughts on
Yeah.
anything we said, whether you agree or disagree, this is a channel and a podcast, a platform where we are open to disagreements. We are open to hearing other people's thoughts, as long as you're respectful, and courteous in sort of your responses. We'd love to just kind of hear your thoughts on what is American culture. Did anything we say or kind of touched on, rang true to you? You related to that? And I really want to hear from people to say, who have thoughts around, is American culture selfish? And yes or no, and why not? Like,
Yeah.
please interact. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, you can always comment on the video. You can always DM us on Instagram. You can send us a message on Facebook. You can comment in any post that we have on Facebook or at Instagram. and things like that. But definitely reach out to us. You can also send us an email. We have our email address listed as well. So you can always send us an email if you really want to give us a good amount of your
Yeah.
thoughts. We're open to kind of reading that too. So yeah, I think we are going to continue. This is the series we're probably going to continue. Who knows how long this series will go, but we'll definitely come back with at least another episode on selfishness of America, and definitely continuing the conversation around American culture as well. All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we will see and talk to you next time.